right. And so what I have today is a presentation from Spark, which is the national training provider on stalking awareness and prevention. So I think that training should take about an hour. There's some videos and some discussion points for us to go over, but I think it'll be a really good topic to discuss. I don't think it's a topic that's new to anybody. It might be, but just to kind of overview and bring our awareness back to it. I think it's really important to educate ourselves and educate the community about these issues. So let's pull the slides up. What's this? Oh, the big green share screen is what it is. Here we go. Is that working?
That looks good.
Awesome. All right. Yes. Okay, yeah. So like I said, Spark Stalking Prevention and Awareness Resource Center. And I can definitely share some links at the end to their resources. And I think actually the presentation will cover it towards the end. So we can follow up about that. But they definitely have a lot of resources online. And like I said, this training was provided for free for communities to facilitate. It says down there, grant funded. So we're grateful to have this public awareness training. Trauma warning, that's important. Definitely sensitive topics that we'll be discussing that can be triggering to some people. So I guess pay attention to how these topics can affect you. And if you need to take time, definitely step away and take care of yourself as necessary. But there will be some true stories and other scenarios that we're going to be covering. So why learn about stalking? This is a video. Let's see.
So why take the time to learn about stalking? Well, stalking is a really important thing to understand. It is criminal, it is traumatic, and it
Sorry about that. Is the audio good, by the way?
Is dangerous. Stalking is criminal. It is a crime across the United States. That means it's a crime at the federal level, in all 50 states, U.S. territories, tribal lands, and in our military justice system. It might be a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on the jurisdiction and the situation. A lot of people don't realize that stalking is a crime, and so many victims are left wondering, well, what, should I call the police because somebody rang my doorbell or drove by my house? And the answer is that victims can consider reporting to authorities as well as documenting the stalking. Stalking is traumatic. Many stalking victims experience mental health impacts, including depression, anxiety, insomnia, and social dysfunction. Quite a few also lose time from work, many lose their jobs altogether, and a significant number of stalking victims choose to relocate. In fact, 1 in 7 stalking victims move as a result of their victimization. It's important to hear from stalking victims and survivors in their own words. This survivor said, "I've given up all hopes of ever having a safe life. For the rest of my life, I will be looking over my shoulder, expecting to see him there." And finally, stalking is dangerous. Stalking often co-occurs with physical violence, including physical assault, sexual violence, and rape. 1 in 5 stalkers use weapons to threaten or harm their victims. And in 76% of intimate partner femicides, that's murder of a female partner by a male partner, in 76% of completed and 85% of attempted, there was stalking the year prior to that murder or attempted murder. So often, these early signs of danger are ignored as, oh, it's just texting, it's just ringing the doorbell. In fact, one researcher went so far as to say that stalking is homicide in slow motion. So what's the good news? The good news is that we have an opportunity, because stalking is one of the few crimes where early intervention can prevent trauma, violence, and even death. When we recognize those early signs, take them seriously, connect victims to resources, and hold offenders accountable, we can keep our communities safe from this prevalent and terrible crime. That's why it's so critical that you learn about stalking and how to know it, name it, and stop it.
Right. Oh no, I lost your faces. Okay. You can see this picture box too, right? I guess if it's on my screen. I'm just trying to, because I like to see everybody, but I also want to make sure everything's visible. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it. I can see it, Katie.
Okay. All right, so there's a couple scenarios. They're actually really short, but we can kind of have a little bit of a group discussion. This has to break into groups, but we're only a handful of people, so I think we can just go for it. Coffee, tuxedo, and TV. I don't know if we'll do all three, but we can try the first one here. So, this coffee scenario says you receive a call. A woman is crying and gasping, struggling to speak on the other end. When she finally calms down, she says, "There's a cup of coffee in my car." So there's a couple, actually, let's see. Oh, okay. It doesn't have the questions on this slide, but as a group, we can discuss what's your initial reaction to hearing this. Do you think the caller seems rational? Why or why not? Or what's your initial read on receiving a phone call like that? And I can reread the sentence if you need me to as well.
Please do.
Okay, so you receive a call. A woman is crying and gasping, struggling to speak on the other end. When she finally calms down, she says, "There's a cup of coffee in my car." So what would your initial reaction to that be? Is there anything kind of floating around in your head, trying to piece it together? Like I said, what is your read on that initially without any context?
The initial reaction is somebody put coffee in her car that she didn't expect.
Okay.
Well, it's a person that knows her, that has the keys to her car, maybe yeah, an ex-boyfriend or something, or someone else. So yeah.
For sure. In a typical, without the context of stalking, would this conversation seem like irrational or just like out of place? Would it seem like an urgent crisis situation without that background, do you think?
Well,
like if she were to call the police, or if you were to have the police involved, how do you think they would kind of react to that scenario as it's presented?
So, of course, the option is that she forgot that she put her coffee in her car,
yeah,
and that's
sure.
that's an easy way to dismiss it.
I think someone is trying to send a message
Especially for the police. Yeah. Yeah, maybe she forgot.
Okay. So if she did go to the police with that, do you think they would find it urgent? And you guys already kind of like listed the possible scenarios in which that panic would be justified in terms of like somebody having your keys or a situation like that. So the second, does anyone else have anything to add to that before I read the second part of it? Okay, so eventually the victim says she's here. It turns out that the caller is a stalking victim who recently relocated. She did not believe that her stalker ex-girlfriend, who has threatened her repeatedly and physically abused her in the past, knew where she was. When she left for work this morning, there was a cup of coffee in her car with the pet name her ex uses for her on it. Okay, so with that information, you can kind of piece a different story together. So how does that new information change your perception of the situation? And what possible message do you think this stalker could be trying to send?
Well, the stalker's clearly saying you're not safe wherever you are.
Okay. Yeah, just that I'm following you. I see you. I know where you are.
Would the victim have a restraining order against him?
We didn't know that.
No, not that I have in this, not that I have in this information, just that there was past physical abuse and threats.
Okay.
But that would definitely be important to know, especially with law enforcement involvement, if there is a past restraining orders. Okay. Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think it would be definitely to victimize someone. It's definitely, in my opinion or my view, it's like a power move. It's a little thing to just let them know that they're there, and it seems like they're trying to like get under your skin, get a reaction out of them, and definitely would have gotten a reaction out of me. I'm not expecting to find, I would not be expecting to find things in my car like that, especially with the pet name. That just would make me very nervous. That would make me very nervous. So, but it's good. It's definitely helpful to have the context and the history, because without that, it would kind of just be like, so what? And I feel like, unfortunately, without that history and possible, or if it's documented too, because I know that the police, require a lot of documentation in these circumstances. So it would be important to retain that information and pass it along in order to follow up with it in a legal way, or to set up a restraining order, which would be, I think, a way to deal with that. So let's see. Would you guys like to do another scenario?
Sure.
Okay. This one, I like this because this is kind of social media. It sounds like Facebook post. It's called Facebook post. You receive a call. A woman is highly agitated and very angry. She is breathing heavily and almost yelling at you.
Mm-hmm.
She says, he posted a photo of himself in a tuxedo at the diner. He just posted a photo of himself in a tuxedo at the diner. She's yelling. She's agitated. She's breathing heavily. What's your reaction? What's your reaction to her response? Do you feel alarmed, confused?
Her demeanor is the most alarming part of it all. Clearly, it's been a trigger.
Okay.
and reading the tuxedo or the tuxedo in the restaurant or the coffee shop or whatever is that's just more detail, but the primary alert is the fact that she is traumatized.
Okay. So kind of similar as the last one, just like you said, Pat, why is this invoking such a strong reaction? Those are the questions that we need to be asking. Because it does, without the proper information, it does seem kind of irrational. You wouldn't know why she would be having this physical and emotional reaction to a picture on Facebook. So let's see. So what do you think could possibly going on that could have caused her to act this way?
When I think of a tuxedo, I think of a wedding, so maybe it's something dealing with a guy that is persistent in trying to get her to marry him, and she says no, and he won't leave her alone. Could be a lot of things.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
It strikes me in situations like these, and that is, we talk about the tuxedo and we talk about why is that relevant. But really, the first, it doesn't matter. The point is that she's been traumatized. She is traumatized. She's in a state of trauma right now, and when one attempts to rationalize why he may or may not be in a tuxedo, maybe he was at somebody else's wedding, yada yada yada. It's the fact that it's traumatized to her is the driving force behind the fact that this is a situation that needs to be dealt with.
Sure, and who knows the intentions of the tuxedo, or if that's related to what's going on with her reaction, or what it is between their relationship, that's sparking this response. But definitely, like you said, whatever it is that's triggering her about this scenario is what's important. So I'll go ahead and read the other half of this. So it says, you learn that the caller is a stalking victim. Her ex-husband has been posting daily photos of himself on Facebook wearing the tuxedo he wore on their wedding day. He posts photos in locations where she has recently been. Wow, I just got chills reading that.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
He posts photos in locations where she has recently been. She was just at the diner the night before. She is afraid because she knows this means he must be monitoring her, but she doesn't know how or why. So how does the rest of that information change your perception, and why do you think he is going about it in this kind of indirect way? And do you think it's still like an active threat? Do you think he's still I think he's still provoking her, and it's still pretty threatening behavior, even though they're not having any direct contact. It's still really scary. So
he's triggering her on purpose. I mean, doesn't take rocket science to figure that out, that he's triggering her on purpose, and that's essentially what stalking is.
For sure. And posting it online, knowing that she's going to see it, knowing that whoever that her friends are going to see it, definitely is really intimidating, and I would assume kind of hard to live your life knowing that, or seeing these pictures and seeing this guy kind of follow you around, would definitely be worrisome. So okay. if no one has anything else to add to those scenarios, I think I'm going to skip the last one, or maybe we can come back to it later, but I think I'm going to continue on. Let me just see. I do have some notes here as well. I just want to make sure there's nothing else. Yeah, so this just says many stalkers use specific personal and disturbing methods to scare their victims. Sometimes it's not clear to victims that a crime actually occurred, which is true. And I would say that a lot of times too, it goes unreported. And like I said earlier, it goes undocumented, which I think is that data is really important to law enforcement to kind of be able to handle in which way they address and handle the situations, because I would assume that every situation and every stalker and every victim is different. So you would have to kind of approach it very carefully, especially if they're already going out of their way to negatively affect these people. So if you got somebody that was actually violent, there's a lot of other things that could play out in these scenarios. So let's see. Context. Yeah, basically that's the scenarios. Without the proper context, or without having the proper information, it's hard to know exactly the extent of and the extent of what's happening and the intention of the stalker and the victim on the victim. Context is critical. Okay, another short video we got.
Context is critical in stalking cases. It's really everything in stalking cases, because a lot of times what seems the scariest to a victim or survivor may seem benign or even nice to an outsider. For example, let's say a victim returns to her desk at work and finds roses. She might become very scared, thinking, well, does the stalker know where I live? How did he find me? Maybe the stalker even said something like, I'll send you roses the day I kill you. Meanwhile, her coworkers are saying, oh, this is so wonderful, and have no idea why the victim's reacting the way that she is. So if you don't understand why a victim's so afraid, you can simply ask them, why was that scary to you? What message did that send to you? Can you tell me more about that? There are multiple studies that show that victim fear is an excellent predictor of victim danger. In other words, if the victim's afraid, there's probably a good reason. Not all victims of stalking express fear the same way. In fact, some may not express fear at all. Some victims may seem more annoyed, sad, angry, or have no apparent reaction whatsoever. Different people react to trauma differently, and that doesn't mean they're not experiencing fear and/or emotional distress. So to summarize, something may be scary to a victim that doesn't seem scary to an outsider. Stalking behaviors often have specific meanings only understood between the victim and the offender. And even if a victim isn't outwardly expressing fear, there may still be fear and still may be stalking. Context is key to understanding stalking and gaining the tools to know it, name it, and stop it.
Yes. Know it, name it, and stop it.
Context is critical.
Okay. Stalking definition. Behavioral definition. Stalking is a pattern of behavior directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to feel fear for the person's safety or the safety of others, or to suffer substantial emotional distress. Okay, so what I take away from that definition is the pattern part. So it's like a pattern of behavior, that it's repetitive, that it involves possibly not possibly, I would say most likely like multiple instances or circumstances on several occasions, and it's targeted at the victim. That's what I take away from that. So,
And it's about fear.
for sure, fear mongering, intimidation.
Fear for the person's safety is what it says right there.
Absolutely. Okay. What is stalking? If what's happening is scary or distressing, not the first incident, and targets the same person, it could be stalking. Okay. Yes, we agree. Oh, quotes from stalking victims. Okay. If you guys want to read a quote, and then we can just kind of go over it, if you'd like to do that. Volunteers, if you'd like to volunteer. If not, I can read them out.
It's I like the bottom one. It's beyond a nightmare. I do not feel safe at all. That constant state of stress, anybody who's been in a stressful situation for any reason, understands that there's a limit to how long you can sustain that state without it having a serious personal effect. And so that's the stalker's methodology is to instill that on feeling of stress and unsafe.
You like the second one, the second phrase, my privacy has been taken from me. Which is key. I mean, privacy is everything. It's so crucial for well-being. But when you know that your information is public and somebody can share your information, that's really difficult to handle. Yeah. I have an experience that someone broke into my email, and it was a nightmare.
Sure.
I mean, it's very difficult. Yeah.
Just feeling vulnerable, feeling that loss of control, and like Pat said, just that state of like constant like having to look out and be aware of your surroundings, and having to pay attention to those things can be exhausting and definitely distressing. So fear, this says fear is how we differentiate stalking from other crimes like harassment. Harassment generally describes behavior that is irritating, while stalking, like you said, fear is the main driving factor behind it, to instill fear in the victim. And like you said with the email, I think that's a good example, or like that's a relatable way to put it. That it's like a small thing that can cause a big change or have a big impact in your life. Is a password, in that example, a password being exposed or your account being hacked. It is what it is, but the reaction that we have from that can make a big impact in our lives. And coming back from that, or situating yourself to feel safe and protected, you're gonna have to take those precautions to put yourself in a better place. So yeah. So and the prolonged stress of this is like an ongoing situation for this whatever extended period of time. It can change people's behaviors or their routines that they have. They can withdraw from social activities, avoid being by themselves or like going out on their own, changing contact information, changing numbers, moving, those kind of things. And just, like I said, changing habits, I guess social circles, or even drinking and drug use as well, just as a way to cope with those stressful situations and that constant fear. So stalking targets one person. Other people may be targeted by the stalker in order to get to the primary victim. Okay, so that just seems like another tactic that a stalker could use to get information, contacting family, friends, coworkers, calling their office, saying, what is so-and-so's schedule, things like that. They're going out of their way to, or even social media, they're checking social media to see what they're at and what's going on. Stalking is a pattern, not a single incident or one-off event, called a course of conduct in most stalking laws. So this is their regular interaction. This is how they interact with the victim. It's definitely a concerning approach. But again, it's a pattern of behavior. Naming it, let me see this one sec. Okay, actually, before I go to the next part, I did want to look up. I'm pretty sure the statutes in the states are pretty similar, but I did find the one for California specifically, and there was, get out of here. There was a little video. Oh my gosh. Here we go. California's stalking laws specifically. So it's PC 646.9A. And this brief little synopsis says, it states that any person who willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly follows or willfully and maliciously harasses another person, and who makes a credible threat with the intent to place that person in reasonable fear for his or her safety or the safety of his or her immediate family, is guilty of the crime of stalking. Okay, so that definitely is pretty specific, but we'll see what this video has to say. Maybe give some examples.
In Penal Code Section 646.9, California law defines stalking as repeatedly following or harassing a person and making a credible threat against them or their family. Now, our common sense notion of stalking is following a person, gathering a bunch of information about a person, and that can contribute to the crime. But in California law, for it to be the crime of stalking, the person also has to make a credible threat. Now, stalking is a wobbler, which means that it could be filed as a misdemeanor or a felony. If it's filed as a misdemeanor, the person faces only up to a year in county jail. If it's filed as a felony, the person faces up to 5 years in state prison. And sometimes the judge can even make the person become a registered sex offender for life and be on Megan's list. So a conviction is really devastating for a person. Now, that said, stalking is one of those crimes where a lot of innocent people get wrongly accused and unfortunately wrongly convicted. And we see that for a number of reasons. First of all, the threat that was made may not be credible. It may be that the person was just kidding, that they weren't trying to put the alleged victim in fear. Also, sometimes we find that the person accused of stalking really was engaging in constitutionally protected free speech. And sometimes we find that a situation was just blown out of proportion, and we have a client who was either misidentified or was wrongly accused. And A lot of people who claim to be stalking victims are really narcissists, and they relish the idea that they're being stalked, and they imagine things that really aren't happening. And it's very common for there to be false accusations. Here at Schaus Law Group, we've had a great record of success over the years at defending people who are charged with stalking and getting charges reduced or even dismissed.
Okay, well, that towards the end there, that was a little bit of an advertisement for this, whatever law group this is. I can understand where he's coming from with that information. But I would have to just say that, let me get this PowerPoint back here. There is a lot of gray area. So that's could be possibly why there is this confusion or this like he said, misreporting or misunderstanding, if that's what exists. But how many times do you guys think something would have to happen in order for it to be considered stalking or to be considered that part of that pattern?
I think it would have to go on for a number of weeks. Anybody, I can see someone being really pissed off and holding on to that anger for a week, and acting really stupid and doing really stupid things. But if once it starts to go beyond that, then even if it's stupid and even if they're doing it because they're angry, they are now in a position of instilling that sense of fear, fear without end. Of course, it would depend on what the the nature of those stupid acts were, or what it was that they were doing. But from a point of view of stalking, there is a requirement for repeated activity or a pattern of activity. So you have to establish that pattern, and so you got to, there's got to be enough evidence there that it is a pattern.
For sure. Thank you. And something else I'd like to add too is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the same behavior. It can be different behaviors over the course of whatever time frame is, that they could be, calling, texting, sending boxes. They could go about it in different ways, and that still counts. That they're kind of like being creative with the ways that they're trying to reach out and have that impact on the victim's life. So, okay. So now we will move on to naming stalking. So I guess we're going to go over different types of stalking. Brainstorm stalking behaviors. Okay. So I think this is an activity. So we don't have to write anything down, but we can just discuss. So we got surveillance, life invasion, interference, and intimidation. So surveillance would be watching, following, gathering information. Let's go through it one by one. So what examples of surveillance stalking behavior can you guys think of?
Standing across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, if the person is following you. Yeah.
For sure. Okay. You notice, like, maybe you notice the same car passing your house, or maybe you're posting something online, and this person keeps commenting on it or interacting with your posts online. I would say or they go to your page to kind of gather that information to know what's going on, would be surveillance. Life invasion, showing up in the victim's life. Any ideas on that one?
Well, if you see the same phone number calling you repeatedly, this would be life invasion.
For sure.
Showing up in the coffee shop or in the restaurant where you're eating as with a pretense that it's by accident.
Yeah.
That's one that the argument there is very difficult because, oh, it was just an accident, but
Right.
5 times is not an accident.
Absolutely. And I would say too, like with family or friends, if this person is, trying to get information from them or reaching out to them, that would kind of be a boundary for me that I would be worried about if they were trying to interact with family members, things like that. Or like you said, Pat, kind of similar, finding ways to find that proximity. If they know you go to a certain church, if they know you participate in some kind of community group, they're showing up at these places and just kind of popping up unexpectedly and non-coincidentally.
And they can show up and not have any interaction. They can pretend like you're not there, knowing that just their presence, they know that is going to be irritating, harassing, a fear factor. It's just letting them know that you know without actually any interaction.
Okay. Oh, look at this. This is yes, basically that's all the things we just said. Interference. Well, let's go back. I like to come up with our own ideas. Interference. Okay, sabotaging, attacking, or otherwise changing the victim's life. How do you think that could look? Interference. A stalker is trying to interfere on the life of their victim. I would say maybe like, yeah, damaging like property, or
well, you forcing the victim to change her life pattern, change where she eats, change where she posts, or make her not post at all, change what friends she hangs out with, changes her phone number. Those are all interfering with changing the victim's life.
Sure. Also, like blackmail, or somebody's spreading rumors, or just trying to cause unnecessary stress in their life, just to intimidate them, or like I said, rumors, and just spreading private information possibly. Okay. And the last one would be intimidation. They're all interrelated, but I do like that they kind of break them up into these categories. So intimidation, threatening, and or scaring the victim.
Threatening is, I will find you no matter where you go. And scaring them is, and you'll be sorry.
Yeah. Just like forced confrontations. That's how I interpret it, or even like them trying to send a message, to send that message that I can hurt you, or I will hurt you, like you said, would be intimidation. So yes, wonderful. So those are all of the examples that we went over. I think we kind of came up with our own ones. Let's see what this says actually. Intimidation. Yep. Blackmail, threats to hurt oneself and or the victim's family. Direct or implicit threats. Okay. Awesome. Stalking prevalence. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's Rob. I didn't even know. Is he calling on Zoom? Okay. Hello, Rob.
Yeah, who's this?
It's Katie.
Oh, hi. Is Robert there?
He is, but you can call the office if you need to get in touch with him. We're just doing the Zoom training right now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so he's not available now, right?
Yeah, you could probably reach him by phone.
Oh, you're doing the training?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll call him. Thank you.
No worries. Talk later.
Bye.
Bye. I didn't know. That's so weird. I thought maybe he was trying to join the call. I don't know how he called my laptop, but very nice. Okay, back to what we were talking about. Stalking prevalence. More than 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men experience stalking in their lifetimes. Okay.
That numbers is surprises me.
What surprises you? What surprises you about those stats?
That it is that high, 1 in 6.
Okay.
What that tells me is that women are experiencing it but not saying it.
Mm,
I mean,
Okay.
I'm pretty familiar with the rate of assault among women. You know, I've had those conversations with a lot of people, and they you know, ultimately they share, yeah, you know, it just comes up in conversation. It goes, yeah, I get that most women have been assaulted, but I don't hear those same stories about stalking,
Okay.
which tells me that it's very intimate.
I didn't catch
Are
that.
not sharing that. Interesting. Oh, I think it's interesting. It's interesting that if that number is correct, then from my observations, women are not sharing that they were stalked.
Sure.
They're afraid to share that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that would definitely be you know, just being aware of what it is, and having the resources and the knowledge to make those reports. And even with the information, some people just choose not to pursue that. So there's definitely always going to be a population that goes unrepresented, but I would say that the statistics are definitely surprising. So women are more likely than men to experience stalking, as the other stats show that. The majority of victims report that the offender is male, regardless of the victim's sexual orientation. Okay, so this basically says that most stalking offenders are male, and that's true for any victim. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This is what we were talking about too. Reporting, less than 40%. Wow. Less than 40% of stalking victims report to law enforcement. That's interesting. Why do you think that number is so low?
Well, there's a credibility issue. If to report stalking to law enforcement, you have to convince them that it's real, and they don't know who you are. So you have to get past the concept of you're just hysterical, you're just making it up, it's not really a thing. You know,
Sure.
you're that is very intimidating. That's a real intimidating challenge. That would certainly, you know, intimidate me from reporting it until it was really so bad that you didn't have a choice.
I guess the other reason maybe the stalker has personal information about the victim and the victim doesn't want that to be revealed.
Mhm.
So I said, better not to report that, so people will not know my public life or whatever. So that is when they do not want to share that with the police or with people, because it's very private and they do not want people to know.
Sure. Or to give them another reason to be agitated or have another reason to be out to get you if, you know, you get law enforcement involved, and, you know, who knows how that could set them off.
Because this is what is happening with all these, what is called sexting. What I know cases that teenager girls share pictures of them with their boyfriend, and the relationship is finished. Then the ex-boyfriend start to say, if you do not come back to me, I will show these pictures to people.
Yeah,
So that's a common issue now with teenagers, the sexting, which is kind of a problem because of that.
for sure. So they might go out of their way to do what they're asking of them, you know, versus pictures being leaked or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever their intention is behind it. So
Yes, blackmailing, yeah.
for sure. There's a couple other things on here. Why would it go unreported? Minimization. So maybe they're told, you know, from whatever source that what's going on isn't that serious, or it'll get better over time. You know, they're just joking. They don't mean it. Someone not recognizing the behavior as stalking. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier, is that if they don't know that they can report what's going on, or they don't know the laws behind it, it would be hard to address that issue. Shame. They could be embarrassed and or think what's occurring is a private matter. So like Alex said, there could be some personal information on the line that they don't want exposed. They don't want it to go in the police report, whatever reason. And I would say as well as if maybe they've had negative experiences with police in the past, or they have reported something in the past and it went, it just wasn't addressed by the police, or it didn't turn out the way that they anticipated. So if there's distrust of law enforcement there, I would say that's a huge reason why people would hesitate to share their story. What is this? Image results for stalking. Okay. So we're looking at this creepy dude with binoculars, you know, just a masked figure following you in the alleyway. Do you guys think this is like an accurate portrayal, or
I think that second picture is very telling.
this one right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
where she's there with her boyfriend, but the ex or the stalker is there in the background. Just
Hanging out.
That's creepy AF.
Yeah, absolutely. The dude, any of the other ones stand out?
Well, they all are. There's a lot of shadowy figures in those pictures.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
The first one on the second row is kind of interesting at her distress at something that came up on her phone, some social media thing.
Yeah. And I do like what you said about the just shadowy figure, which to me is like representing someone that you don't know, or like a stranger kind of, or, you know, someone that's concealing their identity. but I feel like that's kind of like, I feel like media portrays stalkers in that way quite a bit. And there's like this what is it called? I don't even know the word. Where they
Sensationalization.
absolutely, thank you. I
know,
cannot get that one out of me today.
Something
Sensationalization.
that always interests me about pictures like this is that each one of them, there has to be a third party involved. You know, you don't, unless
Okay.
these must be from a movie, or else,
Yeah.
you know, if they're from real life, then there's a third person taking a picture of the victim with the stalker in the background.
That's a good point. That's definitely a good point. So maybe like like a bystander, or like a like you said, third party that's like standing by, seeing these things happen.
Well, if it's a bystander, how would they get the picture? How would, you know, they'd have to
I think these are posed. They're CDC and Gov
Staged.
sources.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Who are stalkers? In the vast majority of stalking cases, victims know the perpetrator. Okay. So most oftentimes they're not shadowy strangers. They're people that we know already. Current or former intimate partners is the highest one, with 43% male victims reporting and 62% female victims reporting that was their stalker. Acquaintances, strangers, family members, and people of authority all listed on this graph. Are you surprised by the numbers between, or the relationships between the victim and offender? Are you surprised by these numbers at all?
Not surprised, no.
I definitely, it definitely makes sense to me that the intimate partners holds the highest number. Just seems like there's a lot of personal situations that go on that can really give people a lot of motive. So let's see. On average, intimate partner stalkers pose the greatest threat to their victims. Why? Why do you think that is?
Because they know more.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the other factor, if they have children, that makes it more complicated.
Okay. Just that if they have kids, they still have to, or they still have like a reason to be in contact.
Yeah, or it's difficult to get away because, well, yeah,
Sure.
he's the father of my children, or vice versa.
Okay. So all stalking can be dangerous, but on average, intimate partner stalkers are the most likely to threaten and harm their victims. Yeah, they know the victim the best. They know their work schedule, their group of friends, even like maybe phone password or email password. They can kind of get it onto accounts and do their surveillance that way. They have the most access to the victim, so that's the reason why they are the most. They can be the most harmful and the most dangerous. All right. So this is a story of a stalking victim. I believe there's another video attached to this. Peggy Clinky, story and discussion. Yes, here we go. I think this is like 15 minutes long. 10 or 15 minutes. So
Okay.
we'll
Okay, I
We'll
just
go-
need to let you know, I have a CFT meeting to go to at 1:30.
absolutely no worries at all. Whatever your schedule allows, the recording will be there for you to come back and look at if you would like to.
You good?
But like I said, what time is it now? We'll do this and then we'll wrap it up with a discussion and some other questions. And then I think talk about resources. But let's go ahead and get this started.
It all began in the fall of '98. At the age of 28, my sister Peggy began preparing for medical school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She met and began dating a man named Patrick Kennedy. You know, in the beginning, it seemed like a very fine relationship to me. They were dating, doing dating things, going to movies. But I noticed a switch in Peggy's personality. I just knew something wasn't right with my sister, and I wasn't sure why. Peggy and Patrick's relationship lasted about 3 years altogether. In March of 2002, Peggy cut all ties with him. From the day she left him, he began stalking her, calling her on her cell phone, begging her to come back, threatening her. He waited outside of her work. He waited outside of her gym, just watching her till it was a sort of a sign to let you know that I'm there and I'm watching her every move. He wanted her back in his life. And until he did, you know, he was just going to persist with it. At one point, Peggy had called me in the afternoon and said, "You'll never believe this. Patrick jumped out of the bushes at work with a dozen roses and a wedding ring and asked me to marry him." And Peggy said, "I walked right by him. I got in my car and drove away." Peggy was very, very strong and very determined to shake this man from her life. And the more she ignored him, the angrier he got. Then he progressed to paperwork. He made a really nice 8.5 by 11 flyer with a photo of my sister on it, wrote all sorts of incredible obscenities about her and put her cell phone number on it and distributed it where she had her nails done, where she had her haircut, where her gym was, where she worked. She took the flyer to the police and showed them that, but there was nothing they can do. It was only a flyer. But I think at that point, you know, we were still thinking that he was just playing a game. We didn't think it would escalate. And then he took greater steps because she wasn't reacting. That June, our family gathered in Orlando, Florida for my brother's wedding. Peggy brought a new man she had begun dating, Mark Sparks. Patrick knew that we would all be in Florida for this wedding. And he had flown to my mother's house in Poland, Ohio. And on her white garage doors with black spray paint, he sprayed "PK is a whore" on the doors. Patrick then returned to Albuquerque to set fire to Mark's house.
I noticed I had about 8 messages on my cell phone and I knew something was wrong. So I listened to the messages. My neighbor, my mother, the police, the fire department were all calling and saying that my house was on fire. Right away, Peggy knew that Patrick had done this.
Peggy and Mark were going from hotel to hotel because they had nowhere to live because Mark's house was set on fire. We were at the point we didn't want Peggy to call us because we didn't know if he was trying to trace a phone call. We didn't want him to find out Peggy's whereabouts. Peggy, it seemed for a while, was just in hiding. Everything that Patrick did to Peggy, Peggy went and reported it to the police. She was getting very, very, very agitated with them because nothing was being done to stop this man from harassing her. Patrick's behavior was escalating and Peggy got a restraining order. She went to the police and filed for stalking charges. The trial was delayed for several months. Nothing was being done.
It was extremely frustrating. And in a time where you're being hunted by somebody and you feel more victimized by going through the system to protect yourself, then what good is it?
And I remember Peggy coming home having a binder of probably 200-300 pages in it of just everything she had documented. Peggy did all the footwork. Peggy did everything. She did everything right, but nobody would help her. Why? I don't know the answer to that. And at this point, Peggy asked the DA, "Will it take a bullet to my head for you to do something about this?"
With Patrick's behavior escalating, we just felt like, at least temporarily, let's get you out of here. Let's wait for this stalking trial to come up. And by that time, we can determine whether it's safe for you to move back home.
Peggy soon left for Turlock, California to begin a new life. She did everything she could to leave no trace or trail to protect herself. 6 days before her stalking trial was to happen, Patrick found Peggy after months of searching.
So how did this happen? After paying a private investigator for information, Peggy Stalker drove to the Albuquerque airport, checked a handgun and a hunting rifle at the airline counter, and flew to San Jose, California. He retrieved his bag with his weapons, rented a car, and arrived at her neighborhood. He posed as a private investigator, approached a delivery driver who recognized her photo, and gave him her exact address.
He caught up with her on her way out of the house early Saturday morning. He duct taped her hands together, he choked her, and he beat her. He beat her so severely with his gun that her blonde hair turned bright red. Despite all of this, Peggy managed to break free and flee to a neighbor's apartment where she was able to call 911.
We're on the way now. Now. With what? He's going to kill us. Stay on the line. Oh my God. Patrick.
SWAT team arrived. Peggy told them, if you open this door, he will kill me. And the police officer said, let's not talk about that, Peggy. Let's talk about your family. And Peggy had said, tell my mother that I love her. And tell my sister who's pregnant to name the baby after me. And tell my niece, Abby, she will have a guardian angel. And those are Peggy's 3 last requests before she was killed.
I just remember punching a hole in one of my walls, and I just, I started crying, and I just said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to Peggy, because, at that point you just feel that I failed her, that the whole system failed her. You just feel powerless.
Wow. Wow. That was intense.
Mm-hmm.
That was intense. I didn't know there was going to be police dispatch footage on there. And also the ending. Obviously, that story did not have a good ending, but I would say that's pretty realistic. I don't know what you guys have to add. If you have any reflections about that video, I would just have to say that I'm disappointed that it seemed that she did all the right things in terms of contacting law enforcement, and they weren't able to protect her in the way that we expect to be protected, or that justice was served in any way. And not that they didn't have the desire to help her, but it was just the bureaucratic process of the criminal justice system that kind of held anything being done. They were in the process of a trial, and he's still stalking her, he's still threatening her, he's still intimidating her, and eventually he did get to track her down. So it's just an unfortunate turn of events. If anyone has anything to add, or we can kind of look at these discussion questions, if any of these questions speak to you, or if you have anything to add to the video. I'll give you a minute to read through those.
I think definitely the most frustrating part is the law enforcement engagement, is the challenge of getting law enforcement to take it seriously. And I understand the challenge. There's the difference between somebody is annoying and somebody is about to kill you is not easily told from past behaviors unless they've actually done it before. They're saying, well, it's just annoying. Okay, so I'm sorry he's doing that, but there's nothing we can do. The fact that she actually had a book of 200 or 300 pages of events, and they still postponed the trial without an arrest or something, that's distressing.
Absolutely. And with the whole situation with the house fire, at that point you realize that you're dealing with somebody that is violent and does have the capacity to hurt someone else and go out of their way to do those things. So I would say that's besides all the other things, that's definitely a huge red flag, and kind of speaks to his intent and his ability to have that influence.
It's also really scary that she totally relocated and cut ties, and he still found her.
Yep. Yeah, he was definitely committed to that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's important to recognize those signs, I guess, early on before it does escalate how it did here, which sometimes we don't have the ability to step in and make those changes, but like we were talking about earlier, is a pattern. And with these different steps that he's taking to escalate his stalking behavior, I would argue that there was many points in time in this scenario that an intervention could have been had, an effective intervention could have been had. So that would if no one else has anything to add, I think that will take us to the last part of the presentation. Yes, stopping stalking. Okay, so don't normalize stalking. I think that's important. I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's oh, they just want you back in their life, this, that, another thing, whatever the reason is. I don't really think there is a valid reason for that type of behavior. But I also feel like media has a tendency to normalize stalking tendencies, I guess, stalking behaviors, which is kind of unfortunate, because that would be confusing for somebody that was having that happen to them and knowing how to react to it. Here we go. Yes. So it's not unrequited love. It's not being awkward. It's not harmless. It's not romantic. It's stalking. So calling it what it is a huge step. Okay, supporting others. I think this is the last video, 2 minutes, 2-minute video on how we can stop stalking, how we can support others that are experiencing these situations.
Most victims of stalking talk to a friend, family member, or someone else they know and trust first before deciding to seek additional help. That person's response can make a huge difference. If the victim's fears are validated and taken seriously, they're more likely to tell others, as well as to seek additional help from law enforcement, victim service providers, or other community resources. If someone tells you that they're experiencing stalking, believe them. Many victims blame themselves, so remind them that the stalking is not their fault. Nothing that the victim did or did not do justifies the stalker's behavior. If you see or hear from the stalker, do not share any information about the victim, no matter what the stalker says. Don't just have one conversation, check in with your friend using the communication medium that they prefer. Encourage the victim to make a safety plan and to seek local services to help them do so. If you aren't sure where to start, Victim Connect can help make a referral to local resources. Stalking victims can also complete an assessment at coercivecontrol.org to learn more about the risks in their stalking case. And the Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center has some general information about stalking at stalkingawareness.org. Remember, victims are the experts on their own lives and safety. Friends like you can provide the information, options, and support to help them make the right decisions for themselves. Together, we can know it, name it, and stop it.
Perfect. I think that is a pretty good place to start wrapping it up. I just take from that is just that people that do experiencing stalking, you know, if they're going through it by themselves, they're reaching out to their support system for advice, for that support. So it's important that we equip ourselves with the information and the resources to be able to support them through that. And on
Can I
that
make a-
spark, go
Can I
ahead.
make a point? One thing that I believe, and that's that knowing it, naming it, and stopping it is a nice catchphrase, but there's something wrong with stalkers like that. They're mentally disturbed, and the only way to stop stalking and to stop illegal behavior like that is to get law enforcement and behavioral health to beef up their services to help people like that. Actually, it makes me a little surprised that in that movie we saw, her new boyfriend, I think his name was Mark. You know, he was not a small guy. I don't know why he didn't just walk up to the stalker and say, "Hey, look, you little jerk, you keep doing this, you know, and I'm going to kick your ass."
Just try to take things into his own hands, just based on the interaction that they have with police. Maybe they're just you know, maybe they just feel like they're kind of backed into a corner where they do have to take it into their own hands. And I would hope that it doesn't get to that spot, but I do understand where you're coming from in terms of like feeling the need to protect yourself and stand up for yourself in that way. But again, when you're dealing with someone, like you said, that's mentally unstable or is having some kind of crisis, you don't know how they're going to react. So it would be kind of like walking on eggshells with these people, and the unpredictable aspects are what I would be nervous, or what I would be worried about the most. So
but I think that the being able to know what's coming, in other words, if you confront it, then it's right there in front of you, whatever happens. If you try to hope it'll go away, then the perpetrator gets time to let the thing fester in his mind until that's when he starts getting tape and getting guns and getting prepared for whatever screwball thing he's going to do. But if it's confronted in a kind of a surprise way, it's something that he has to deal with right now without being prepared. And if either the police or behavioral health or a big friend or hiring a bodyguard, I think
there's options for sure. Yeah.
Just an opinion.
No, I totally agree, is that if you kind of put your foot down in that way, whether it be, you know, standing up for yourself in a physical way, or like you said, those other options, kind of nipping it in the bud before it does escalate is definitely the best way to handle this kind of situation. Festering is a good word. You don't want to give them more time or more motivation to be plotting and planning to hurt you. So that's definitely important and a good thing to point out. Absolutely. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add? I think I will leave you with that. Okay, here you go. If you want to take a screenshot of this, that is their website.
Okay, and I'm going to leave you. I need to go dump my CFT.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Katie.
No worries. Thank you guys. Thank you guys
All
for
right.
joining and participating.
Thank you, Katie.
Absolutely. But this is their website that you can check out. They have those documentation sheets, which we talked about how important it was to document stalking, instances of stalking. And there's other resources on their community resources as well. So definitely check that out.
Okay.
I appreciate you guys, and please let me know if you have any questions. And this, like I said, this recording will be, I'll post it online for later access as well for anybody that's interested.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all.
Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day.